Okay, it says I'm live. Can you guys hear me? Never done this before. Wait a few minutes until. Wait a few minutes. Wait. Wow, I can hear myself. Isn't that good? Can I still hear myself? No. Okay, good. Oh, there it is. Let me try. Hello. Why am I hearing myself? That's not good. Okay, can you hear me? Oh, that's why. Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now? I think I had Twitter open in the background, and it had the YouTube in Twitter, and so I was getting sound from YouTube in Twitter. But if you could confirm again that you're hearing me right now, then I'll start. I think we might be good. Thanks, Adrian. I think you said that a couple minutes ago, though. Can you hear me now? Cool, cool. Okay, good. Finally got it figured out. My first experience with YouTube Live, so figured there'd be a couple snafus. So don't have Twitter open in the background with your link to your AMA because that causes you to hear yourself in the background. So I guess we'll get started. So yeah, hey everyone, welcome to my first AMA on YouTube. I just thought I'd do this as an experiment. I've done this on TikTok a few times, but never on YouTube, and I figured, why not? So anyway, I'm John. My company is Roadkill Incorporated, abbreviated RDKL Incorporated. On the social media, I'm RDKLINC, which causes confusion, but hey, whatever. You got to have a business name. I've been refurbishing laptops and Apple devices for 15 years. I buy mostly from recyclers in broken condition. I fix them up and I resell them working, mostly wholesale. Um, don't do much to direct to consumer, mostly wholesale. And I'm rapidly shifting my focus to retro these days. Um, it's just getting kind of boring doing pallets and pallets of modern MacBooks. So I'm kind of shifting my area of interest. So out of having a business for so long came several other interests. A business tends to be sort of a foundation out of which other things grow. So having so many broken computers around, I started collecting broken screens that looked interesting and collecting machines that had interesting GPU defects, graphics processor defects. They did interesting things on the screen. And I would load up, I'm a photographer too, so I'd load up my photographs and let the defects affect the photography. And then I would take a picture of that. And out of that came my unexpected art career. And you can see that on my Instagram, which is RDKLINC. So Twitter's where I spend most of my time, honestly, but I really want to make YouTube a thing. And I'm posting every Friday at 3 p.m. or so. My series is called Retro Resale, and I'm currently on episode number 7, which, so it's pretty new. The idea is that I show you how to make money buying and selling retro, and I take you through the whole process from finding stuff on eBay to fixing it up and selling it, and then seeing if it's profitable or not. Kind of like that show American Pickers or whatever, except retro hardware on the internet. So a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people think that retro should always be free, that, everything retro should be $5 at a garage sale. But as a refurbisher, I firmly believe it's important that prices be as high as possible, actually, because when things are valuable and things are expensive, that's when retro computers get saved and don't get scrapped. Recyclers, they pretty much just destroy retro on site. But if I can tell them, I'll pay you $80 for every Amiga you run across, they'll bother to keep it. So, the value is what keeps retro from being destroyed. So with my series, I'm trying to stir up the market for buying and selling retro. Yeah, I didn't want to do an episode this week. I was lazy, so I thought, hey, I'll do an AMA instead. So that's why I'm doing this. But next week, I'm doing a video on red MSX computers. This is an MSX computer. I have about 15 of them. So just a preview of those. Should be interesting. I'm going to try to find a way to show all of these guys. So beyond that, I'm into repair activism, specifically the right to reuse, I call it, keeping good devices from being scrapped. There's a very dark sort of underbelly to the recycling industry. And people don't know it, but tens of millions of perfectly good devices get scrapped every year under the guise of recycling. People think recycling means reuse, but it doesn't. Recycling means breaking down into the component materials and then, melting those down and making new products out of those. But it does not mean reuse. Things get scrapped when they should get reused. Tens of millions of products a year. People just don't know this. So I try and put a spotlight on that and tell people, hey, go to the recyclers, pay them money, buy the stuff before it all gets scrapped. And by the way, you can create a business like I did. I've been independent for 15 years. My entire living is based on buying broken stuff, fixing it, and then selling it. So my ideal success would be to create 10,000 small businesses that do what do what I do as far as that goes. So let's see. We got some comments. Is it hard to get parts straight from the manufacturer? Says Joe Mama. Well, I'm probably the wrong person to ask that question because I deal with old material and recyclers, refurbishers. What we do is we use broken machines to get the parts to fix the machines that are not that are repairable. So I'll buy 100 machines. 70% of them will be viable, 30% of them won't. I'll use the parts from the 30 to fix the 70. So I would never buy a part from straight from the manufacturer, because when you're a refurbisher, your cost, you own the machines. Like if you have a repair shop, it's all up to whether the owner of the machine is willing to pay the $300, $500. If they are willing to pay that, it doesn't matter what the value of their machine is. You have a transaction on your hands. But a refurbisher owns the machines, owns the old broken machines, and they're on their second, third use at that point. So there's no, it's all about what the machine is worth. So if the machine is a machine that sells for $200 on the street, you can't pay $100, $300, $500 for a part for that computer. It just does not make business sense. So as a refurbisher, a long-winded answer, as a refurbisher, it doesn't make sense to buy parts from the manufacturer ever. I've never bought a single new part from Apple. So that's kind of where right to repair comes in. It demands that manufacturers make parts available to anyone who wants them at a fair and reasonable price. We'll see what that is. But that's part of what right to repair is about. I'll get into more on right to repair later. How do you find recyclers, and how do you create a relationship to get consistent inventory? From Simone Johnson. Good question. Good question. First thing I would do on that, I'll answer it here, but I have a video about 30 videos deep, how to buy from electronics recyclers. And so I would definitely suggest digging that video up and watching it. I made it because I get asked this question quite a bit. So the thing about recyclers is, if you go to a store, for example, you're the customer, the store is the seller. The customer is always right, as they say. This customer has responsibilities, the seller has responsibilities. You can make demands of the seller as the customer, but the thing is, people don't realize in the recycling world, the dynamic is shifted. It's reversed. You're buying from them, but really they're the customer. You are the service provider for them. You are providing them the service of taking off their hands, for example, MacBooks whenever they get them. So it's necessary to treat recyclers as your customer at all times. You are there to make them happy, and that is because they can sell to anyone. And you have to make sure that they sell to you. The way I put it is, like, you're their trash person. Imagine if you sign up a trash person to take your trash, and the trash person only takes half the trash. What are you going to do? You're going to find another person, because that's no good. You want all the trash to go away. So yeah, you're their trash person, and you're responsible for taking all of whatever it is that you designate you buy. So I am the Mac guy, the Apple guy for recyclers. And I tell them, hey, I will quickly and efficiently take all the Apple stuff off your hands that you get. And I build the relationship that way. And it can last years if you're just reliable doing that. So how do you find them in the first place? Well, as I mentioned in the video, I found most of my recyclers, honestly, I found them on eBay, just searching for inventory on eBay. And the thing is, a recycler on eBay is, something if you can identify a recycler on eBay. And what is that they don't have a Mac guy, because if they did, they'd be giving it to that person, and they wouldn't be taking the painful effort of selling it all on eBay. So if you find a recycler on eBay and their prices are reasonable, and you buy something from them, and it's good stuff, and you see that they have a ton more, you should go to them and you should say, hey, thanks for the thing. By the way, any Apple product or any whatever it is you buy, I'll take all, excuse me, I have kind of a cold, so I might be kind of out of it. I'll take all of it anytime you get it, and I'll make your life easy. You be that service provider for them. And that's how I found the majority of recyclers I've ever dealt with. Just found them on eBay, make that relationship, take it offline, and then they just call me up every week and have more and more and more for potentially years. So that's how I found them. It doesn't have to be local. They can be across the country. You can have them shipped to you by freight. I send a lot of small recyclers, FedEx, prepaid labels, really convenient tool to use. But basically, the thing that the biggest takeaway with recyclers is they're playing a game of Tetris in a warehouse. That's the way to think of recyclers. It's a big building. Lots of stuff is coming in. Big chunks of stuff is coming in constantly. And you're a specialist and you say, hey, recycler, whenever you get the big red chunks, whenever a big red chunk comes in, I will buy that from you and I will show up and take it away efficiently. And you're helping them play the game of Tetris. You're helping them win at the game of Tetris. So think of it like that. They don't want to take a big red chunk and break it up into 1,000 pieces and sell you a few little pieces. They want to sell you the whole thing. So that's why you have to take all in that kind of situation. So what's the part you have to fix most to be able to resell them back? Well, I don't really fix parts. I just sort of swap parts. It's kind of like a game of jigsaw puzzles. You have 100 machines and you have to swap the parts from the bad ones to the good ones, swap out screens, whatever. So I don't fix parts, just to be clear. I use parts from other machines. But screens, I mean, it could be anything. It could be screens. It could be keyboards. It could be drives. It just depends. It just depends. And every different model will have its own bottlenecks. The bottleneck is the part that you run out of quickly. If you run out of boards and you can't fix anymore because you don't have enough boards, that's the bottleneck. If you run out of screens and you can't fix anymore because you don't have screens, that's the bottleneck. So different machines will have different bottlenecks. But yeah, you just keep the excess parts around. And then when you get the next lot of computers in, then you have parts that help you fix those. And it's good to specialize. It's very good to specialize because when you specialize, you have the parts and you have the knowledge. When you fix something the first time, a new machine for the first time, you're the stupidest you will ever be because you've never had that experience. It'll take you, say, 2 hours. And you'll make the most mistakes and you'll waste the most time. But the second time you repair that same machine, it cuts down to an hour and then a half hour and then 20 minutes and then 10 minutes. And then if you get 1,000 of that machine in, you can fix 15, 20, 25, 30 of those a day because you've become an expert at that machine. And that expertise can be applied as a tool, essentially. And that helps you. Whereas if you say, hey, I'll repair everything, you're a fool because every repair you do is going to be a first repair. So I have a list of questions that I've accumulated from my vast social network out there. I've asked people to ask me questions. So I'll try to give preference to people asking questions in the feed here on YouTube. But when there isn't one, I will resort to my list. So on Twitter, Tim Kusar asked a question. He said, it's a repair question. He says, I have a blue and white G3 Apple. It's not a PowerBook at that point. No, it's a blue and white G3 Tower desktop, 20-year-old machine. It was working for a few months. It was working a few months ago, but it isn't now. I removed the PRAM battery, but did not replace it. Does it need a battery to boot? So thank you, Tim, for mentioning this, because I actually have a pile of blue and whites that I needed to remove the batteries from. So I went and took out all the batteries from those. You need to, in 20-year-old machines, you need to take out the batteries so they don't corrode and melt a hole through the board and all of that. And I took those batteries out and the machines did power on. So those machines do not need a battery to boot. Seems pretty conclusive. What's your next step? I would say, I'm not an expert at desktops, but I would say the power supply. Make sure your power supply is getting power if you have a multimeter and you're savvy that way, which I'm really not, you can test the power supply to see that if it's getting power or not. But that's the first step. Make sure there's power getting in, and then you can go from there. So, this is weird. This is really strange experience. Anyway, so next question. Laptop Retrospective on Twitter. That's a great account. They have lots of good content. From your experience, how can we keep our technology running longer before it's decommissioned back into raw materials? What levels, groups need to be the most involved or have the greatest impact? So that's a very good question. Kind of an the essential question, really. And I'll start by saying, there's nothing wrong with an individual trying to, fix their own devices, trying to keep their own devices in use as long as possible. That's a good thing. But I don't think a movement of trying to make people fix their own stuff necessarily and keep their own stuff longer is necessarily the answer. And that's in part because there's a vast, dark universe of recycling and destruction and corporate apathy that is actually behind the scenes destroying all of the devices out there. As someone who buys from recyclers, I see the destruction. I see the shredding of thousands of devices. I see the contracts that recyclers agree to with corporations to just shred everything, regardless of whether it's working or not. So it's very apparent to me that tens of millions of perfectly good devices are being scrapped on a regular basis. And so if we want to save our technology, if we want to save our devices, yeah, keeping our own stuff running longer is a good thing. But what we really have to do is we have to rescue the stuff from recyclers. That's my main thought. We have to rescue the stuff from institutions. Like I said, I want to see 10,000 businesses started to form small companies like mine that can help save all of this material. Let's see. Any more questions there? No. Okay. So we're on to the next question. And there's this idea of like, you can try to save the world, or you can try to fix things at a local level and do what you can do as a person. And there are laws, there's regulation that can happen, and there's some of that is necessary. Obviously there needs to be regulations, there needs to be tax incentives to keep let me put it this way: a recycler, it's not cost effective to recycle a lot of material. People don't realize, but there is a cost to recycling. If you take a big old printer to a recycler, they're going to charge you money to recycle that. It's not a given that they can take that thing and make money recycling it. So the question is, who's going to pay for all of this recycling? In a purely capitalistic system, a lot of stuff just gets shredded because it does not make financial sense to actually recycle the stuff. So yeah, it makes sense there be regulations, financial incentives, for example, for recyclers who want to take a pallet of good computers and would rather not scrap them, but would rather put them back into the world. It makes sense that there be structure to government and the financial system such that that kind of good behavior is incentivized. But on the other hand, a lot of government solutions tend to backfire. They tend to defeat the purpose. So it's just very complicated. So I waver back and forth from trying to save the world on the level of government, that kind of stuff, to just trying to do what I can do locally, to do what I can do with my own company. And I think ultimately, I favor that side of things. I think we can all if not solve the problem, at least have a much bigger impact just doing what we can do personally. Because the big stuff, the laws, the regulation, it's all very difficult, and it's hard to say if any of it ever does any good, really. Okay, so third question comes from Matt. Can you unlock my T2 MacBooks? No, I can't. And that's the thing about activation lock. You can't unlock it. It's just a bad thing. Yeah, as of 2018, MacBooks were able to be activation locked, just like iPads and iPhones can be activation locked. It's a sad thing. You see recyclers just with piles of activation locked MacBooks now, and they just get scrapped. It's really sad. Actually, he's saying, can you unlock my T2 MacBooks? There is one sort of caveat to that. If you have an Intel with a T2 chip, like 2018, 2019, I believe there is a bypass for that. Meaning it doesn't fix the activation lock, it just kind of sidesteps it so you can actually use the computer. If that is what he is asking specifically, yeah, I think there are some software bypasses. appletech752.com, again, appletech752.com. He's the guy to check out for that kind of software and those kinds of tools if you want to take a look at that universe. But if you have an Apple Silicon machine with integrated T2, M1, M2, M3, those you can't even do a bypass. Those you're just completely screwed, and it's a really sad thing. So let's see how many people we have here. Hard to say. I'm not used to this interface, but anyway. In the chat, let me know if you've got stuff. Otherwise, I will just keep going with this list. What tools do you use? I'm not sure what this person means by tools exactly. Well, in terms of cleaning, I use Magic Eraser. I buy these from China for I think it's like $40 for like 500 of them. It's pretty funny actually, because they sell them, they ship them in this like giant brick. It's like wrapped in a black trash bag. So it's like a giant cube, but it weighs nothing. It's just this, yeah. And yeah, don't buy these at the store because they'll charge you like $1 each, and you can get them just hundreds for super cheap. I think I'm still using the 500 that I bought like 2 years ago. I use rubbing alcohol. That's a great tool. 99% there. As of the pandemic, I started buying it on Amazon. I think it's like $50 for like a gallon of 99%. So it's easier than going to Target and finding that they don't have any. I actually like 91% better than 99%. 99% it vaporizes a little too easily, and I start coughing. 91% doesn't do that, so I'll water down my 99% a little bit. What else do I use? I use tweezers. I think these are like Italian tweezers. And I use razor blades. Just standard razor blades are like the best repair tool that exists ever. So tweezers, razor blades. I use screwdrivers. I use a lot of screwdrivers. These are Moody brand screwdrivers. You can get them on iFixit. Like if you do the drop down and do like professional grade, I think is the Moody comes up. I like fixed bit screwdrivers. And iFixit kit is great for the weird stuff that you don't use that much. But for the 5 screwdrivers that you use, all day long, I prefer fixed bit, and these guys are super high quality, work really well. What else do I use? Oh, yeah. I use, well, no, I won't say I use these because to use these would probably be a DMCA violation. So I'm not going to say I use these, but I have these around and I look at them quite a bit because they're just nice to look at. So what is this? This is a firmware removal tool. It supposedly, I hear, works on 2012 to 2017 MacBooks. This supposedly clips onto the SMC in a 2012. And then this guy, this is modular, it comes out, clips onto 2013 to 2017. I hope I'm actually in the frame here. I don't know. Yeah. So there are 3 different sizes that fit on various 2013 to 2017s. And you basically clip it on, you turn it on, you wait for the 3 green lights, or is it 3 or 4? And then the firmware is removed, I hear, at least. And I also have this. Of course, I don't use it. I just like to look at this nice key. This supposedly is a serial number changer, which supposedly can be used to change serial numbers on 2012 to 2017. I hear you just plug it in, option boot from it, and then you can change the serial number. And I hear that that's really good for basically getting by remote management. A lot of machines that recyclers get are remote managed because the institution hasn't removed them from remote management. And remote management is based on the serial number. So you have to change the serial number to get by remote management. And that's what I hear anyway. Of course, I would never try that. Greg Coons. Hey, Greg, how's it going? Still have those Atari STs and monitors from that big buy a while back. Yeah, actually, I still do have the majority of them. And there are more than that too. So it's pretty scary, pretty big pile. A lot of the monitors did not end up working, unfortunately. So I don't know what to do with dead Atari ST monitors. People won't pay the price of shipping for a dead monitor. Yeah, they won't pay $50 to get a dead monitor, even a cool Atari monitor. So I don't know what to do with that kind of situation. So much in the world would just be solved if we had teleportation devices. Elon needs to invent teleportation devices because the cost of shipping destroys so much. You know, there's so much stuff that in the world that if we could just teleport it to Africa, it could be used again and it would be viable. But the cost of shipping to a place like Africa is just not worth it, unfortunately. Okay. All good computers serve asks me, where are the power on pads for 2019 MacBooks? Okay, so I don't know if you guys know, but there are power on pads are 2 little metal spots on a logic board. And the point of that is it's an alternate power button. So if you use tweezers or whatever to bridge the 2 pads, it should power the machine on. Actually, you have to disconnect the keyboard and then bridge the pads, and you can jump the board that way. The reason you would want to do that is, let's say you have a machine and you try to power it on and it doesn't power on. Well, the power button's connected to the keyboard and the keyboard's connected to the board. So if the keyboard is fried and you're hitting the power button, the power button's not going to be effective. So the question at that point is it a bad board or is it a bad keyboard power button? So what you do is you disconnect the keyboard and jump the board with the power on pads. If you're able to jump the board, that means that the keyboard and power button has a problem. And if you're not able to jump the board, then that means the board has a problem. Does that make sense? So yeah, so I have a website connected to my main website, roadkillinc.com, called poweronpads.com, in which I document where the power on pad locations are on every MacBook board, because it's really hard to find them. Like they hide them. But I did kind of stop recording that around 2016 or something. So yeah, 19, I don't know. I'm sorry, all good computer services. I would have to look up 2019. I don't even honestly know if Apple's still doing that. I haven't heard much about power on pads for fairly recent machines. Okay, so next question. How do you find a good deal on retro computers? This comes from someone on Twitter. Yeah, how do you find a good deal on retro computers? Well, I mean, I get a lot of them from recyclers. When I buy all of their MacBooks, um, I ask them to do me the favor of keeping the retro for me, and I'll pay them, reasonable prices for all their retro. And they don't have to do that, and they're not making a ton of money doing that. They're just doing that because I'm buying all their MacBooks, and they want to be nice, and I have a good relationship. So there's that. I also buy a lot on eBay, and I do that by obsessively searching for the search vintage computer. And I search vintage computer maybe, I don't know, 300 times a day. And it's necessary to do that because the best stuff appears, and then I buy it, and then it's gone. So people go on eBay and they think, oh, I can't find any retro at good prices. That's because I bought it 3 minutes after it was listed. So you really have to be obsessive about doing searches. If you only search once an hour, that's not enough. If you have alerts set up, that's a joke. They only an alert alerts you long after it's relevant. So you just have to be obsessive about how you continuously search all day long. Obviously, a lot of people aren't going to do that, but that's kind of what you have to do because there is no real automatic tool that will do that very effectively. Also, recently I've been sort of discovering Facebook Marketplace, and I've been buying like lots of large lots, lots of barn finds and storage lockers, and people dying, and their relative has to clean out their hoarder house, that kind of thing. And most of these situations are like, it's like 30 miles away, and the person's very difficult to deal with, so it's hard to make a deal. But if you're willing to drive out there, and if you're willing to just kind of like with the recyclers, you just say, hey, I'll take it all, $500, I'll take it all, I'll be there in an hour. Just make it easy for them. Just say it how it is, and you can get just insane amounts of stuff. I got a storage locker full of like 120 consumer and pro vintage stereo gear, just for a few $100s recently. It's just crazy. My wife's not happy because it's in the garage, but yeah. So the stuff is out there. You just have to be really persistent about looking for it. Where can I find recyclers that sell laptops? Well, I think I went over that previously. Yeah, I mean, basically, eBay is where you want to start. The ones that are in need of a MacBook person or whatever, they're listing stuff on eBay, and so that's an indication that they could use help, and they will respond if you interact with them appropriately. You can call random recyclers, but chances are, like I said, they've already got a person that they're tied up with. So that's a harder way to go. Okay, you guys got to come up with some questions because I only have one more here. So Igor asks, do you think right to repair is going to have an impact on computers being scrapped? That's a tricky one. The thing about right to repair, and I don't mean to knock right to repair. I can come off as being like anti right to repair, and I'm really not. But right to repair is very much sort of consumer facing. It generally services the first user of a device and their right to get parts for that. And it also services repair shops that repair primarily the device while it's with its first user. And that's a good thing. Those two populations deserve to have their stuff repaired, and the repair shops deserve to be in business doing those repairs. But right to repair largely does not concern itself with the reuse world. Once something goes from its first user to its second user, that's reuse, that's refurbishing, that's recycling. And like I described, a new part does not really help refurbishing because you can't spend $500 on a screen for a $200 computer. So right to repair, yeah, it doesn't concern itself so much with the reuse world, with the secondary market, with the recyclers. And like I said, the recyclers and the institutional apathy and all of that's where the stuff is being scrapped for the most part. So in sort of an ancillary way, right to repair helps because if computers last longer, things like that, if computers can be repaired that otherwise wouldn't be viable, then sure, that's good. But it doesn't directly affect, I think, what is the core of the scrapping problem, which is what's happening with recyclers. Yeah, and that's why I call my sort of repair advocacy right to reuse, because I'm for right to repair, but I'm also for right to reuse. I'm for saving the devices from recyclers and from being scrapped, that sort of thing. So I at this point, I think I'll mention something that is really concerning me right now, and it kind of falls into this topic. I don't know if you've heard of parts pairing, but I think parts pairing is enemy number one. What parts pairing is it's a practice that Apple has been doing for many years now with iPads and iPhones, but they're just starting to do it with MacBooks as of a couple years ago. What it means basically is that there's a cryptographic tie between the board of a computer, the logic board, and the other parts of the computer. So there's a cryptographic handshake between the board and the battery and the trackpad and the screen, and it could be any part. And so what that means is, let's say I trip and smash my screen. But you think, okay, no worries. I have this other perfectly good used screen here. I'll just swap out the used screen, right? So the thing is, I could swap out the used screen, but then I will experience performance issues and defects. And that is because this cryptographic handshake is not happening. It's not going through. So what right to repair does is it forces Apple to sell you a brand new part. And when you pay $500 for a screen from Apple, and they send you the new screen and you swap it out, you'll still see those defects and those problems that I just described. It's just that in that situation, because you bought the screen from Apple, you can contact Apple and say, hey, I bought a screen from you. You have record of the screen. Can you parts pair it? And they'll say, oh, yeah, okay, cool. Thanks for being a customer. And they'll flip a switch on their side, and that new screen you bought will suddenly work because it's now paired. But the kicker is, the thing is that's so problematic, they will not pair used parts. So every used part on planet Earth, every used Apple part on planet Earth is trash, is scrap, is ready to be destroyed, because Apple will not parts pair used parts. That is horrifying. That is absolutely horrifying. Like I said, refurbishers, recyclers, anyone in reuse, they do not buy new parts because it does not make financial sense to buy a new part. What do they use? They use used parts. So what it comes down to is, if parts pairing is allowed to exist, it's game over. It's game over for repair, for refurbishing, for reuse, for the entire secondary market, for every device on planet Earth as it goes from its first user to its second user. When it's on the first user, maybe right to repair is saving it by allowing them to buy a new part from Apple. But once it's on its second user, its third user, and the computer is worth $100, and it doesn't make sense to buy a $200 part or a $700 part, it's just game over. So that is horrifying. And it gets even worse. So the thing with right to repair is succeeding right now. It's passed in several states, which is very exciting. But the thing is, the California bill allows parts pairing. It doesn't explicitly disallow parts pairing. So what's going on is that Apple is championing. I don't know. They are promoting the California bill because it lets them have what they want, which is a monopoly on the repair business, which is parts pairing. They are actually going so far as to say that they will honor the California bill nationwide. And they're also saying, hey, we think there should be a national bill, and the national bill should model the language in the California bill. Now, why is Apple suddenly, this company that has spent millions and millions of dollars pushing against right to repair, suddenly they're super excited about this California bill and wanting to make it a national bill? Why is that? It's because it gives them parts pairing. So again, this is horrifying. We cannot have a national bill because there is a good chance that it would allow parts pairing, and it would just be game over. It wouldn't matter if states had the anti-parts pairing language in their right to repair bills, because a national bill would supersede all of that. And what makes it worse too is, I know some White House correspondents from major news organizations, and they tell me, John, like, do not expect any changes to happen under this administration that make big tech angry, that they don't agree with, because the Biden administration is stacked with ex big tech employees. They tell me nothing that the big tech companies don't like is going to pass under this administration. So I really, really fear that if a national right to repair bill succeeds in coming up for a vote, it will probably give Apple parts pairing ability, and that is horrifying, and that cannot happen. And I don't see right to repair making parts pairing number one priority. It needs to be number one priority, because if parts pairing is allowed to exist, the other right to repair initiatives don't matter. It doesn't matter much if you can get tools or parts or schematics if parts pairing exists, or at least it greatly diminishes the value of all of those things. So anyway, that's my soapbox on that topic. Let's see. Adrian Smith says game consoles too, parts pairing makes repair difficult, can only do component level repairs in most cases. Yeah, I've heard about that. Like, I think in some consoles the drive is paired to the board, or in like PlayStations isn't like the optical drive paired to the board. It's ridiculous. I mean, iPhones, iPads, I don't know how iPhone and iPad people have been surviving, because those products have been parts paired for many more years than MacBooks have. And I just don't understand how they're still able to make any kind of profit with those devices. Greg says, do you prefer working with vintage computers or reuse of near modern ones? It's funny, this heart icon like covers up the words, but I think it says near modern ones. That's a good question. I mean, it's sort of a different. I'm kind of straddling two businesses right now, because my preference is to switch to retro, because in retro, there's no need for right to repair when the manufacturers are dead. and everything is big and chunky and well made and designed to last forever. It's just very nice. So I prefer to go towards vintage and retro, and I think I will long term. But I am sort of straddling two businesses right now. I'm not like actively going after recyclers and trying to buy mountains of MacBooks anymore, because that's just getting old. Just dealing with. Hey, Luke. Yeah, refurbishing thousands of the same machine. I'm just getting too old to deal with that, weeks and months doing exactly the same thing. So, but I still have recyclers that still give me their stuff. So I still deal with a lot of the newer material, but then I'm simultaneously sort of running a retro business. I would say I prefer retro overall. It's harder to make money in retro because it's a smaller population of people out there. You put a MacBook out there on eBay, for example, or anywhere, and it sells in 5 minutes because there are 50 million people looking for MacBooks. You put an Atari ST out there at a premium price, and it might eventually sell for full price, but it might take 2 months because it's got to find that audience. So it's definitely a different market. The money is not quite as significant. But yeah, overall, I definitely probably prefer retro. It's just a challenge to make that kind of shift. I hope with my video series, I would love to have a thriving YouTube component to that. To have a YouTube and Twitter element that sort of operates alongside the retro business. I think that would be ideal, and that would help it out a lot. Okay, Luke says, have you ever picked up one of these crazy huge laptops like an HP Dragon or XPS M2010? No, I don't think I have. Is that one of those giant gaming machines or desktop replacements? I don't think I have. I would guess probably I probably haven't, because recyclers mostly get stuff from government, corporations, and education. So a lot of the pretty crazy, over the top, excessive consumer devices don't really get purchased by those institutions. So that may be why I haven't seen things like that. Greg says, yeah, I figure retro has a finite timeline for the market. Yeah, I mean, retro shifts. I mean, there's stuff that is retro now that is really hot now, and then there's stuff that's going to be really viable in 10 years. I'm keeping mountains of iBook G3s and G4s and PowerBooks that aren't worth anything now. They're barely worth scrap value now. But I'm sort of hoarding those, anticipating they'll be big in 10 years. So we'll see. Greg says, it seems nostalgia driven. When the people with nostalgia leave the market will dry up, I expect. Yeah, it's probably. I was just talking to a guy who refurbishes old cars, and he was talking about that, when the people from the 50s, 60s, and 70s die off, are the kids gonna are they gonna care? Are they gonna want these old cars? But on the other hand, I mean, look at what Elite Obsolete Electronics is doing with iPods right now. I mean, he's selling iPods for $200, $300, and young people are just all over the iPods. So who knows? I think there's hope. Luke says, I recently got a whole bunch of random computers, and G4 was among them. Yeah, I think G4s will be, they'll have their moment. Titanium specifically, titaniums have always been, there's a lot of nostalgia with titaniums because people, that was a lot of people's first big creative workstation with a big screen. A lot of musicians had titaniums and want one. Again, they want to buy titanium because they have old keyboards and stuff that need an old PowerBook to drive their music workstations, that kind of thing. So, unless you guys have anything else, I think that's about it. It's been about an hour. Yeah, titaniums are amazing, says Greg. They have a lot of flaws, the paint chips and the screen flops and stuff. But when you get a nice one, they're really nice. Luke says, I've started going after some of the machines I've been desiring for ages. Samsung Q1 and a Panasonic Toughbook. Oh, yeah. I used to deal with Toughbooks in the corporate world here and there. Those are interesting. That's a really, like I talked about specialization. Toughbooks are a good specialization to get into, a good niche market to get into, because recyclers do get those. Police, the cops use Toughbooks. A lot of law enforcement uses Toughbooks, military. So those get dumped to recyclers. There is a market for those. Funny thing is, recyclers will take at least 10 years ago, they would just take the caddy out with the hard drive out of the Toughbook, and then they would scrap that whole thing. Well, Toughbooks have a really elaborate caddy that holds the hard drive. So if you don't have the caddy to put the hard drive in, you're kind of out of luck with the Toughbook. So I knew a guy a long time ago whose entire business was salvaging the caddies and then basically selling the caddies back to the people who got the caddy-less the Toughbooks. So kind of a funny thing. Well, anyway, yours came from a query. That's funny. Yeah, they can come from anywhere. It's funny where you find the stuff. I mean, it's all about the U curve. Like, so when a computer is new, it's at the top of the U curve, and it's worth the most that it's ever been worth. And then it comes down rapidly, down. Then it's worth $100. Then it is at the bottom, and at the bottom is scrap value. The bottom is where stuff gets destroyed, where it makes more sense for recyclers to destroy it than it makes sense for them to try and sell it as a working product. So the devices that survive the bottom of the U curve, well, after the bottom, if they survive, then it starts coming up and it becomes retro and it starts becoming worth money again. But the stuff that survives always has a funny story. It's always like a hoarder house where a guy had 100 machines in the basement, because it takes a goofy story like that to keep it out of the quarries and the landfills and the recyclers. Every retro device that has survived has kind of a funny story of how it didn't go down the usual path and get scrapped. 100 machines. I think I'm nearing that. Oh yeah. I wish I only had 100. I have I have too many. I have issues. So anyway, cool. Thank you guys for listening. This has been fun. Definitely have to do this. I don't know, maybe every month or something. I'll do one of these. It's easy to do and it's fun to interact with people. So why not? It's been about an hour. Some of the policies of recyclers I hate so much. I can't grab any machine at all unless I remove everything out of it. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, recycler policies, recycling certification policies. I don't want to get into that whole thing because I can talk for another hour about that, but it's just sad. Especially in the EU. You think the EU, they'd have it together. The reputation of the EU is generally like, they're doing things the right way, but they're not. If you're in the EU and you hand a device to a recycler, by law, it has to be scrapped. By law, it doesn't get reused. By law, it can't come back out the door again. I was shocked to hear that. I try to teach people to run businesses like mine, and I have that video I talked about, and I give people that video and say, here's how you do it. And people in the EU would watch my video and they'd be like, but there just aren't recyclers here. Where are the recyclers here? And when I do encounter a recycler, they say, absolutely no, I will not give you stuff. And yeah, I came to realize once it goes in the door at a recycler, it's scrapped. So really terrible situation. Yeah, the UK e-waste policy forces me to dive from smaller bins. Yeah, you have to get it before it hits the recycler. That's the thing. Um, you have to go to your local communities and capture the stuff before it goes to the centralized locations. Libraries, department stores, yeah. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, yeah, that's I have a friend who's on Nextdoor, which is an American social network which focuses on the local area around where you live. You sign into it and you give your zip code, and it only allows you access to, I don't know, like the mile or something around where you live. The idea is that you're part of your local community. And she got really successful being the person on Nextdoor saying, hey, you have electronics you're getting rid of. I'm your person. I'll come pick it up, and she got really successful that way. And that's what you have to do. It's a brilliant strategy. You have to get it from the local community before they donate the stuff to a recycler that's just going to scrap it. Yeah, we'll pay more than scrap for vintage Macs. That's the way to go. And that's the strategy with recyclers too. If you have recyclers that are willing, say, hey, I'll pay you 3 times scrap. I'll take all your Apple stuff. I'll pay you 3 times scrap. And I will buy all of it all of the time. And I will show up at your door 2 hours after you call me, and I will pay you instantly. You be that service provider, and they will respond because they're businesses. They need to make money. And what you offer has to be worth it. It has to be a viable business transaction for them. Cool. Well, anyway, I'm going to end this now. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been a lot of fun. I hope to do this more often. And again, my series is called Retro Resale. And next week, look out for the Red MSX edition. So thanks again.